Um, Welcome to this live where we're going to be talking about, I'm going to share some ideas and hopefully you will share some of your ideas as well about Hollywood's role in the battle for the fate of humanity. And I steal that line from Mark Moss. I think it's a great descriptor of what's going on. And I apologize up front if I, get a little sniffly. I've got my Kleenex here because I'm detoxing and or experiencing a little bit of a head cold. So if I, look a little off, that's why. If I look a little paler than usual, that is why. Last night I watched a phenomenal conversation on the Order of Man podcast. Ryan, I forget his last name. I should know this, but he was having a conversation with Kevin Sorbo, and it was phenomenal. And during that conversation, of course, they were talking a lot about Hollywood and Hollywood's, what's happening in Hollywood. And he brought up a very good point. And I think about this quite often, the fact that Hollywood used to be, and California used to be very conservative, right? The whole United States used to be very conservative. All of these cities that are now falling, right, now in decline, New York, Seattle, Los Angeles, California, Oregon. It's starting to obviously happen in Chicago. All of these cities that used to be great were made great by, conservative values, right? It's really easy to see when you look about the history of this, but like Kevin Sorbo was talking about, he said, hey, Hollywood's going and gone full woke. And this is why many people are leaving California. They're indoctrinating and manipulating children and people in general. And I see it. Perhaps you see it as well. I'm going to share with you the movie that turned me off to Hollywood. It was only a few years ago. And if you have a movie that turned you off, I'd love to hear it. Leave it in the comments down below. I'll share the one that got me in just a few minutes. That made me pretty much tune out 80%, maybe 90% of what Hollywood produces and be very conscious of what I watch from Hollywood for sure. It freed up a lot of time. I will say that. But if you have a movie that, that woke you up to what Hollywood's agenda is, either a children's movie or, a movie for the masses, let me know in the comment section down below. But anyway, this conversation, they were talking about Hollywood's role. And I think it's important that we have this conversation because Hollywood is very influential to what happens in the world. Media and entertainment is one of the ways. Here's the ways that I think they indoctrinate children and shift public perception and manipulate and change hearts and minds. I think it happens through the entertainment industry, the music industry, sports for sure, education for sure. Anytime you're communicating with someone and potentially getting into their consciousness, you have an ability to change the way they think and view the world, right? It is very, very, very powerful. And that's one of the reasons why I've ramped up my own content creation in the last number of years in order to to speak my mind, right? And maybe you do this as well, to speak my mind in this war, because it is a war. It's a war of information. It's a war of ideas. It's a war of, we're battling for hearts and minds not only in America, but also in the world at large. And I feel it's an all hands on deck type of situation. I really do believe that in this war, there will be no conscientious objectors. Everyone at some point will be involved in the battle for the fate of humanity, which is the battle between good and evil. There will be no one sitting on the sidelines. And I really do believe that if a person is sitting on the sidelines, that is a conscious choice. And I'm not judging that choice at all, because believe me, I have been there in the past and I'm there 2 degrees now, right? There are things I want to say that I don't say because I haven't figured out a way to say it in a way that doesn't ruffle feathers or that doesn't hurt someone, right? There is such a thing as friendly fire in this war of information, in this war of words, right? I describe it to friends who ask me what I do is I describe it to them like someone I know and love or a fellow human being is being held hostage by an idea that isn't serving them, that doesn't serve humanity ultimately as well. And I'm trying to, being held hostage by an idea like a bad guy, and I'm trying to shoot the bad guy without hurting them, right? That's what I feel Hollywood does, is it holds people hostage by inverting reality or undermining or subverting reality, or what is good and moral in the world. And I realize that's a slippery slope to go down, but just hear me out. What's good and moral in the world, and then that's how the enemy advances their goals, right? And to that point, what Kevin Sorbo talked about last night was, and we all know this, for decades, families in sitcoms have portrayed the father figure as bumblesome, dumb, incompetent. The wife is, again, they're inverting reality. The wife and the children take the front seat, and they're the ones that have all their shit together. And the man is the target of ridicule, right? The father is the target of ridicule, on the surface, it's just funny, ha ha. But when you peel back the layers and you know the enemy, right, and you know their agenda and what they're trying to do, that's next level warfare. That's psychological warfare, because the enemy knows that in order to suppress or win a war and overcome society and humanity, you have to remove men. You have to remove strong father figures, right? You're not going to bolster up the father figure, because generally who fights the wars? The men fight the wars, right? And if you undermine men in a society, you'll have a better chance of flipping that society and getting them to come under your to oppress them, right? To subvert them, have dominion over them. And this is the role that Hollywood plays in my mind. And it's super, super dangerous. People are waking up for sure. There's no question. People are waking up. The question is, will enough people wake up in enough time in order to save humanity, to save the United States, right? That's the $100,000 question. Let me share with you the movie, speaking of when I woke up to what Hollywood was really about, and it got too dark and sick for me, and that was Suicide Squad 2. Now, don't judge me. I realize that is a wild movie, but that's the movie that I was watching, and I'll probably be sharing some clips. I found a clip the other day of the scene in that movie, Suicide Squad 2, that really put me over the edge, was so dark and twisted and sick that it permanently changed the way I think about Hollywood and made me not want to watch any more of their stuff, because I was realized, oh, you guys are into mind effery and I don't want any part of you. That was this scene, and I'll describe it for you here, and maybe you've seen it. These creatures, like this alien creature had these little baby alien creatures, and they would attach to people's faces like a little starfish with this big eye on the front, and they would attach to people's faces and control their consciousness, right? It was disgusting and sick. And there's certain scenes in that movie which are absolutely horrible. And that movie made me realize, oh man, I don't want any of those scenes in my consciousness. I don't want to be a part of their psychological warfare, their manipulation, and just undermining consciousness. And I can't tell you how much happier and, awake and aware I am since I tuned out many of things Hollywood produces, and a lot of the music too, right? I don't listen to mainstream music, and I get it. It's a win-win. I don't have to listen to commercials, and I also don't have to listen to the lyrics of those songs that are subtle ways of programming people. That's what I believe, right? Let me know if you feel that way as well. But you listen to, I love country music. I love all genres of music. But what I'm seeing is it's always, songs about downtrodden, down and out, trying to make ends meet. They're almost putting poverty consciousness up on a pedestal, like it's something to be revered, and like it's a cool thing to do. And then it happens in the real world. Then you get your friends and neighbors gathered around, and sometimes people commiserate and say, like, this shit sucks, and they commiserate about it instead of saying, hey, how this shit is awesome, right? That's what Hollywood can do. It can change hearts and minds, and it can subtly program us in ways that make us then undermine ourselves and then hurt ourselves and or other people. So, after watching that movie Suicide Squad 2, I was like, this is so dark and so twisted and so sick that I don't want any other part of it. Right. And then, things you just kind of protect your consciousness. See, you've probably heard this term that this is a spiritual war that we find ourselves in. And ultimately, we're spiritual beings enjoying this human experience. So it makes sense that that would be the case. If it's a spiritual war and a war for the hearts and minds of humanity, it makes sense to protect yourself from their forms of spiritual and psychological warfare. And that's why I don't watch those things anymore. And I got to say, I'm a lot happier, right? I'm a lot happier. But if you have a chance to check out that interview, it was super, super good. It's only like 30 minutes. I shared well, you can find it on YouTube at Order of Man Podcast, and I forget the gentleman's last name. His first name's Ryan, I believe. Sharing some great stuff about protecting masculinity and keeping Hollywood from influencing our country. And they are failing, quite frankly. People are waking up, and I'm a perfect example. 3 years ago, I did not think the way that I thought now. I was always skeptical of government for 15, 20 years, and I just viewed them as bumblesome. And they had nothing to offer me. So I just viewed them as kind of like, well, you do you, I'll do me kind of a thing. But over the last 3 years, with their major aggression, right, into my life, quite frankly, I was like, oh, well, now I'm going to start speaking out about it. Now I'm going to move this front and center, because clearly they can't stay in their lane. I view them as greedy. I view them as overreaching in many, many ways. And I see the people that are in government, in many cases, not all, but I see the people that are in government, and they just seem to think that they know best on how I should live or people should live. And I don't think that's the case at all in many cases. And I just want them to stay, as far away from me as I can get them, quite frankly. And then we'll all get along, right? But you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane, kind of a thing. But if you have a chance to check out that interview, it's super good. But anyway, yeah, Hollywood's role in the situation is just it's concerning, but again, like I say, people are waking up. I wish I could remember the movie. It was a preview that I saw a few years ago. It was a children's movie, and there was a subtle message in that movie. It was some type of animation, something about be kind, or almost like putting kindness and or tolerance above courage and knowing yourself and knowing your own values and drawing boundaries in the world. That was what it was doing. And I can't remember the name of it. When I do, I will share the clip of this trailer that was playing before this movie. And it was at that point in time, because of the subtle manipulation and the subtle psychological aspect of it, that I really started to see it really clearly, what Hollywood is doing and subtly changing these hearts and minds of young people. And then they grow up, and without a strong values and strong principles, you are swayed in any direction the wind blows. And that's what I believe happened in the last number of years. I think enough people weren't anchored in their convictions about what they know to be true in the world, right? Who they are, what their values are, who they know the other people are, right? I knew government was always sketch, especially at the federal level. And so when they come to me and said, hey, we care about you and we have this solution, again, I was like, no, thank you, right? Thank you, no, thank you. But people that hadn't done the research and didn't know them and doesn't know their history of one bumble after another, one bumble and or worse after another. I mean, Bill Clinton apologized twice at the White House for our federal government doing unspeakable things to its own citizens. One for Tuskegee and one for radiation experiments. Mind-blowing. But how many people watch that? How many people know that, right? I think about this quote all the time too. When you know yourself and you know the enemy, it's a Sun Tzu, art of war type of a thing, you are better prepared to have a victory. In a world where they're drawing our attention out a lot, how it's hard it can be challenging to know yourself when you're like, look over here, look over here, look over here. And then they're subtly influencing you as well. That's a problem, right? That's a huge problem. That's why protecting yourself and protecting your consciousness is super important. But I think that's what happened over the last number of years. People that weren't anchored didn't know themselves, right? Didn't know the quote unquote enemy, so to speak, didn't know much about history and or about these certain corporations. Not, knowing what the federal government has done is one thing. Knowing what the Food and Drug Administration has done is a whole other thing. And also then knowing what the pharmaceutical industry has done is another thing. Pharmaceutical industry is unequivocally the worst offenders based on fines from the Department of Justice, the worst offenders in the world for making fraudulent, misleading claims about their products and services. There's no question about it, right? It's well documented, well established. They are the worst of the worst, worse than big oil, right? Those people are super sketch, but most people don't. I shouldn't say most. Some people don't know that because they haven't researched it, right? How did the Vioxx problem get created? How did the opioid problem get created? Pharma, right? Making fraudulent, misleading claims about their products. It's well documented and well known. And that's why anyone who takes a little bit of time to research will figure that out. And now here we find ourselves where pharma has ramped up their commercials on every platform by far. They're pushing all sorts of medication, all sorts of drugs. And I just pray every day that people do their own research before they get involved with those companies, because those companies have a long history of putting profits over people. And again, lying to and misleading human beings. And that's one thing that I pray about all the time, is that God helps people see through the BS that those corporations are putting out there, because it needs to happen. So that's my piece. That's what I wanted to share with you, talking about Hollywood's role in all of this. It is super important. That I think they're the tip of the spear, quite frankly, because if you can change the minds of people, the hearts and minds of people, and manipulate them and undermine them, then you don't even have to fight the war, quite frankly. And that's what we see too. Right? At the high end, psychological warfare is done in such a way where the enemy doesn't have to lift a finger to fight humanity. Humanity will defeat itself. And that essentially is what's happening. That's next level psychological warfare. And the other thing that I think some people don't realize is that, this warfare that's going on in our world it's spiritual, it's psychological, it's physical in some cases, it's intellectual. It hits all aspects of what a human being is. It's economical. It's financial warfare. Look at the prices of things, right? That's again a way to cut the legs out from under people and destroy them and or hurt them. And then not to mention throwing people, using human beings, throwing them into countries to undermine the systems. Mayor Eric Adams is a prime example. What happened in New York? I mean, he's like, yeah, give me all the people you want. And now that is taxing their system to such a degree that he come on a few months after he asked for all the people, he said, yeah, this might destroy New York. Now, in my mind, that's a criminal activity, because his words and action caused detrimental harm to that city. And I don't know why he's still mayor, to be quite honest. But there are many forms, it's hitting us on many levels, this warfare that's going on in the world. And some people, I don't think, see it quite fully yet, although I know people are waking up. But Hollywood, I think, is at the tip of the spear kind of a thing in the psychological and intellectual aspect. And many parents are pulling the plug on Disney and some of these woke corporations and woke studios that are pushing this BS, quite frankly. So that's my piece. Thanks very much. I want to end with talking about your goals and dreams, your aspirations, what you're inspired to be and do in the world, and the Focus and Flow product and apparel line, which is available at focusandflow.co. It's the product and apparel line for conscious creators, and it is all about helping you create your dream, whatever that may be, whatever the seeds God put inside of you that you are inspired to do in the world, and create your life in a focused, deliberate way as opposed to drifting and or creating something and doing something that, again, society uh, kind of influences you to create or manipulates you to create. We don't, in other words, we don't want to be a cog in the beast system. We don't want to be a tool in the beast system. We want to create a heaven system, a God system on earth, right? Encouraging people to be what they were, be who God wants them to be, do the things God wants them to do, leave our payload in the world. John Bolles, I don't know how you say the last name, but Bolles, he wrote What Color Is Your Parachute? He has a fantastic little book called How to Find Your Mission in Life, and he talks about this. He says, it's vitally important that people find their mission in life and do their purpose in the world, and especially right now, because I think that's what shines the light in the world and brings more joy into the world. And so Focus and Flow is all about helping you do that by reminding you that you are a creator. And when you create from an inspired place and align what you want to do in the world with God's will for you in the world, then it's all going to work out nicely. I'm working on a system, a life planning system, and also a process for doing that, right? For living your best life, living an extraordinary life that God intended for you, right? And that's going to be where you are the best version of yourself, where you're pushing into your hopes and dreams. And that's coming out very soon. But again, check out Focus and Flow at focusandflow.co. Thanks for hanging out with me in this live today. I appreciate you. Leave me a thumbs up if you like this live stream and like what I'm talking about here. Share your favorite, that's not the right word. Share the movie that woke you up to Hollywood's agenda and shocked you. Maybe they moved the line further than you were comfortable with. Share the movie in the comment section down below. Like I said, mine was Suicide Squad 2. I know it's a wacky movie, and some people probably already realized not to watch that garbage. John Wick is another one, right? I have a lot of respect for Keanu Reeves because of, who he appears to be as a person. Although I will say anyone at a high level in Hollywood, I am very suspect of these days. And his John Wick series is not the best stuff we want to put into our consciousness, super violent and super levels of aggression. I think that creates it perpetuates the warlike mentality in the world. And as much as I have respect for Keanu Reeves, especially for what he's doing outside of Hollywood with his motorcycle company and just who he appears to be as a person. What he's creating, what he's putting out in as far as movies in the world are questionable at best, right? And appear to be, it's not good to watch those kind of movies. And again, I used to watch them. So let me know what you think, what your movie that woke you up to Hollywood's agenda is. And until next time, I really appreciate you guys for watching. Like I said, leave me a thumbs up and I will talk to you later. Until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.